Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and today's guest is the amazing Dr. Kevin Mays. He's a transformative leadership coach, speaker, and the author of a game-changing new book, Lead Yourself First. Dr. Mays, thank you so much for being here and joining me today.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much. I look forward to the conversation.
Awesome. How have things been in the leadership world specifically?
Things are amazing. It's an amazing time right now, right? Because if you watched TV, you would think leadership is falling apart. And it's such a great reminder when you watch things on like a national level to understand that that's not leadership, right? Leadership is really being grounded and helping others be better. It's not a marketing scheme. It's not about pushing your agenda. It's about creating a better place and better people. When you do that in an organization, it changes the game. And it's really about helping let go of your own agenda. And it's amazing. I know we were reflecting on this a moment ago, working with one particular business I talked to yesterday. And it fills my cup when I hear them say things like, we are radically altering how we show up together. We're communicating more effectively. And there's a vibe here that wasn't here before. They're really leveling up or upgrading, I'll say, their leadership. And it's heartwarming. So yeah, a lot of good stuff going on.
Nice. Yeah, it's great to hear that things are going well. And I know that we talked a few minutes before we started about the release of the book. And I know that I'm excited about that. I don't know that I've secured mine yet, but I certainly will be doing that. But in that new book, I want to talk about that around a lot of those concepts that you have in there, though I don't know what's in there particularly. But let's talk about some of those things. And one of those is really focused on the topic of leading yourself first, right? And you discussed the premise that the starting point for the development of a personal, like your leadership skills begins with ourselves. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the most fundamental rule, because what happens with so many leaders, you think about the leadership journey, right? We become a good producer and a good performer. And because of that, we get elevated into a totally different skill set. Similar with entrepreneurs, right? You wear all the hats, and then as your business scales, your job shifts. But so often what I see from leaders is the secret to their success is something they learned early on, right? It's this really the neural programming, or what I say, the robot brain playing out the patterns in their thinking that is the secret to their success. And they reach a critical point in their organization where they become a detriment. And I've seen it again and again. I call it founder syndrome, with so many founders who the magic in their organization was their creative brilliance, their innovation. They brought it, they created it, they nurtured it. And now they're at a point, though, as their business grows, where they still have their hands on everything. And they keep showing up the same way, knowing that they are right and that's what the organization needs, but they're blind. They don't see that what they're actually doing is undermining the results they want. They're showing up with their hands on everything, and nobody's, it's like they're down in the engine room of the boat and nobody's in the pilot house guiding the organization forward. Their job shifts radically from product design and implementation and putting their hands on everything to inspiring towards a vision, creating an engaged culture, being the visionary, right? And unless they can make that switch, I've seen a lot of organizations just plateau. And ultimately, then it's their own demise. They're not able to scale. And if you're not growing, what do they say? If you're not growing, you're dying. So the real work is to upgrade your leadership and to recognize that when we talk about your leadership, right, your leadership style, this is what I love. Your leadership style is nothing more than your personality playing itself out at work. And to recognize that your personality, you got it legitimately. When you came into the world, you really didn't have all your software programmed yet. You start having experiences. Based on those experiences, you form beliefs, you form patterns in your thinking, patterns in your behaving that allowed you to thrive, allowed you to survive through your childhood into your adulthood. And now decades later, you're still playing the same patterns out, and it won't get you where you want to go. Got you here, won't get you there.
Yeah.
That's the upgrade. Upgrade your leadership is really saying we have to upgrade that neural programming. You're operating on DOS right now, and we all are. right? We all
Yeah.
are. Here's one great way I love to think about it. Think about reading. When's the last time you read anything? People right now can read our names on the screen. They had to read their way in to get to the site, what have you. We read without even thinking about it, but we didn't come into the world learning to read. Now it's
Yeah.
so intuitive and deeply ingrained, we don't even have to think about it. However, if we saw everything suddenly in Arabic, most of us would have no idea what was going on.
Right.
Our leadership style is that ingrained that it's just normal, it's natural, it's common sense. We don't see it. And we also don't see that it's a vast limitation to us really bringing out the potential in our organization. And when I say lead yourself first, right, then you recognize leadership is much more than your organization. It's about leading yourself and leading your life and living on your terms. You get one shot at it, and most people I see just get stuck in the pattern, right? They just keep doing the same thing. It's comfortable. We live a life of comfort. We really miss the opportunity in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Lead yourself.
As you're talking about that, I mean, there's so many ideas that are running through my brain right now. And before I go on to the next question, which I have kind of gunned up, but it's a perfect segue into that, and that'll come in a few minutes. It is, you're absolutely right. The way that all the experiences we have as we're growing up, all the things that we experience as we go into our careers, if you can call them those, into our first jobs, as our experience in all of our experiences in entrepreneurship, whether those, and typically they will be failures in the beginning, or at least very, very hard, right? And not successful. And so you can gain things from those and they can be successful, and you can call them successful experiences. But the leadership piece, I remember in my early days in my career in the military, where individuals would ask about, how do you develop your leadership skills? Because I only know how to do what I know how to do. And that goes into the idea that you're leading with the experiences you have. And they can often be a detriment, if you will. And there are people who go to make decisions, and they do that based on assumptions of experiences that they've had in their lifetime. And they don't apply leadership skills. They haven't learned them. Maybe they don't have good supervisors. And those assumptions can lead to really bad decisions or strategies in the way that you're going to make a decision. Someone will say, I don't want to ask so-and-so something because they will say no. There's an assumption. You don't know that for a fact that they'll say no. You don't know that an individual won't take your pitch. You don't know that an individual won't be willing to change the way that they act or do things if you're trying to move a subordinate into a specific form of performance. And so that really, you're right on top of it when you say you got to start with yourself, because I made the worst mistakes in my leadership career through the idea that I was doing the things that I should do because that's the way I would do them, or because I assumed that some environment would be in which I kind of thought it would be. And so I think you're right on point with that. And that kind of really segues right into that 5-step ascent blueprint that you've talked about on your website that's in the book, about how the way for us to start being different is to think different, which is really, really powerful. Yes. And I think a lot of leaders kind of struggle with that.
It starts
what
with
are your
that.
thoughts
But,
on that?
if I can, in segueing into that, I want to back up a little bit. When you said one thing, I think you said is powerful. People will make a decision saying, well, they'll say no. And so what's that is, you can unpack that. What if they'll say no? Then you still have to make the attempt, and your job is to influence them. But there's really baked into that a fear of rejection, right? And that's the thing that, okay, so they say no, they say yes. If you're a scientist, two elements come together and form two metals form an alloy. That's just the reality. Change your contribution, the alloy changes. You can't change the other person, but if you change the way you show up, the other person changes. So I think for me, when I've heard people say, they don't do something because of what the other person will do, it has nothing to do with the other person, 100% to do with the perception I have of the other person and the accompanying emotion that is buried in that. So now I have a fear of rejection, or I have worked with a lot of good, really good, like executives, CEOs, business owners. I'm thinking of one particular who makes decisions if she's not paying attention out of guilt. She will, because she was the gold, the family hero growing up, oldest child, learned to be the one who was ultra responsible, did everything for everybody. Father was a first generation immigrant, started a restaurant empire, and now she's ascending into it. And the thing that gets in her way is she's over facilitative. She brings everybody in. She carries all the weight herself and always takes it on herself, and takes too much on herself, doesn't delegate, and doesn't want to disappoint anyone. And whenever she makes a decision that's a hard line decision that somebody doesn't like, she'll start to feel guilty. And if she's not paying attention, the guilt makes the decision for her, because then she ends up making decisions so she doesn't feel guilty, as opposed to making the decision that is the right decision. And they're two different decisions. So I love it when you think about kind of that. For me, it's the conscious leadership pathway, leading yourself first. 4 key steps, right? And one of those, I wouldn't say the starting point, but one of the key steps is self-awareness, right? To be able to have awareness of what these patterns are. We don't really ever get trained to see ourselves well. We get trained to be the masters of the external world around us, right? If you're a good engineer, you spend your whole life studying engineering, being good at engineering. Great. You can design skyscrapers and bridges. It's all externally focused. And then you step up into the world of leadership because you're really good at the task. But now, again, it's a very different skill set. And you approach it the same way with that logical methodology, failing to recognize that humans are not logical creatures. We have logic, but that doesn't mean we're logical creatures, right? So how the real work is, and how do we influence? How do we persuade? And how do we keep ourselves out of our own way when we're frustrated, irritated? Because then something switches in us. The internal caveman comes out, and it changes everything. So step one in this conscious leadership pathway is about learning how to be present. That's a starting point, just to be right here, right now, especially in this world of distraction. We're so focused somewhere else. We're looking at a screen, or what as humans we do, right? We have this approach avoid mechanism built in. We move towards what feels good and away from what doesn't, based on our internal narrative. So we predict and anticipate the next thing. And we'll create anxiety for ourselves about the presentation with the boss or the economy. We'll create stress for ourselves, not based on what's happening, but based on our mind's projection of what we think is going to happen based on our past experience, which is no more than us just perpetuating this kind of fallacy. It's not true. It's just us perpetuating this belief set. And then here's the thing about how our mind works is we will find our brains are wired, our minds are created, constructed in such a way that we will find the data that perpetuates the beliefs we already have ingrained. We don't see truth. We see things that support us in being right. And similarly, we look back to the past, we create anger, we create regret, we create shame, we create guilt, not based on what's actually happening. And not even based on what actually happened, but based on our perception and our fantasy that we are constructing and hauling along like the weight of the world on our shoulders. Step one is just be present and let that down.
It's almost like we find our own evidence to substantiate our thought processes. To justify the way we think. So, because what person easily there are people that can do this, but what person easily says, I know I'm wrong and I'm going about it wrong. And rather what they want to do is they want to be, people naturally, at least I think that this is true. They want to be right. They want to be confident. They want to know that they've got the right idea. And so they're going to say, this is what's going to happen and that's the case because back 5 years ago, this is what happened. And this is what Bob did, and this is what Jane did, and this is what I did. Almost as if you substantiate your own ideas to logically put that forward as truth, that this is what's going to happen, and that's such a hard thing to battle.
It's an invisible force. We don't see it. The slippery slope is when you learn to really start to pay attention to how your mind is working. When you know that you are right, It's a slippery slope. That's when there's attachment to an idea. That's when you're not open. That's when you're not curious. That's when you're missing things. And that's when you have found validation. And you said, you experienced it 5 years. And I would say, yes, 5 years and 10 years and 15 years. And it's a deep pattern ingrained in the neural fabric of your personality that you constructed. There's the software that needs the upgrade. But we don't see it. We see the world through it. That's the hard thing. It's like, how do you take the lens off? It starts with just being present. First of all, you have to be able to come back here and now and recognize that when you are present, that's the first step in being able to cut through these deeply ingrained patterns. And when you cut through these deeply ingrained patterns, sometimes it's uncomfortable. My God, ignorance is bliss, man. It feels good to just be right all the time. But I'll tell you,
problems go away if I don't look at them.
Yeah, right. In my relationship with my wife, me being right does not get me the relationship that I want with my wife. And there's the dissonance. You can be right and you can be certain, but the question is it taking you down the pathway of being your best self? Is it helping you be the leader that's possible? And I'm going to bet when you look and take an honest look at yourself, you'll see it's not. They're two different routes, two different pathways. One is you carrying the past and validating and justifying your behavior and your thinking processes to make you right, because it's the thing. It's that approach avoid. We're hedonistic, right? We want what feels good. So we move towards that. See, I'm right. We beat our chest. I'm right. I'm good enough. And we seek that validation in the external world. That's not a true leader is not on a quest to seek validation from the external world. They're able to cut through that and make the hard decisions, and also make the decisions that leave them maybe sometimes feeling that deep uncomfort, the squeamishness in our own skin. But it's the right thing for the moment. And the only reason we feel that uncomfort or the squeamishness is because we're cutting through the pattern that we developed early on.
Yep. Man, I hope people are listening. I hope they're listening to this, because there's some gems in here that, I'll have to quote you on some of these, but I'll tell you, you are absolutely on point with this stuff, which is why we have you on the show. But it's not only are people just... You're absolutely right. What am I going to get from being right in a particular conversation? I wonder how hard it is. I'm really good at this part, and I'm happy to say that when I feel like that I have a valid argument, we'll use my wife as an example, where I have a conversation with her and I have a topic and we're discussing things, we're debating, and I know I'm correct, or at least I'm 99.99% sure I'm correct. There is a question. I am good at interjecting the idea of what will it get me by continuing in this who wins kind of mindset. I'm right, and then this is what I'm going to do. In reality, if there's no real value in this, and the value for me in a relationship is just to make sure that we settle the communication issues, to identify. In fact, I tell this to my kids, and I don't mean the parenthetical this, but I always tell my kids, recently, this is within a year, it's not you against you. It's you and you against the problem. Both of you define whatever the problem is, and you guys talk about that. And instead of saying, well, she took it from me and he took it from me and he started it and she started it, it's really about, no. Let's look at it as you, brother and sister, are together facing an issue. And so my wife and I now follow the same suit, where when we're discussing something, not to say it always works this way. It doesn't, but 99% of the time it does, where we say it's you and I against this issue that we're trying to solve. And what are we going to do to work together to fix it?
I think that's fantastic. For me, the word I like is alignment. And what I find in organizations and in my life, all over my life, when I'm aligned with individuals, there's power in that relationship. But when I'm dug in, and when I become reactive, right? Because what happens? I've got this cognitive framework and I'm perceiving something in the external world. I'm personalizing something that's happened or something that's said as an invalidation, as an attack, as somebody or the world saying I'm not good enough, right? That's really what starts to happen. It brings out this ghost within that's buried down deep, that's self-doubt. right? Now the
Hmm.
self-doubt comes in, and that's when I become defensive. That's when I start to argue. That's when the emotion starts to take over. And that's when we fall out of alignment, right? It becomes me against you. And I think that's so profound what you're saying when you just are aligned with the other person to solve it and focus on the problem. When we start to personalize it and make it about the other person, then we're missing the mark altogether. We
Yeah.
lose our leadership power absolutely in that moment. But I
Yeah.
love the level of awareness you have to have. So for me, right back to the 4 steps of conscious leadership, number 1 is presence. Number 2 is just awareness that it's happening. How do you stay aware when this thing starts to happen? Like, have you done anything that helps you develop? It's really in my mind, it's a mental muscle. It's a skill that you can develop, like going to the gym to develop, your biceps. There's a mental muscle of awareness that it sounds like you're bringing more and more into your relationship with your wife. How have you done that?
Hmm. Well, I think a bit of it comes with age. I think
Wisdom.
maturity, wisdom has come through with that. I think it's a lot of self-learning. You know, I can't speak for everybody, but for myself, perfectly I can. Life in my younger years was not super easy. And I don't think it got easier until I met my wife, honestly. I think that's about when and I don't know that that's coincidental. I just know that's when I match life getting better with a specific individual. And I think that as I've gone through and I've cared more and more and more about the relationship that I have with her, it's caused me to kind of inference inside of me what I'm doing. Is it constructive, destructive? Am I doing the right thing? Am I being fair? And I've done a lot. And I think for me, how I got to that point to ask and to interject an idea that would be, something strategic for her and I to go at a problem together rather than to go at each other
Hmm.
is just to say, I don't have the time nor the energy to fight over someone about being right. I just don't. I try to think, how are we going to solve this so we can get over it and get back to the thing that we really love, which is spending time with each other and being productive in whatever we're doing.
Yeah, it's so dead on. It's interesting in writing this book, Lead Yourself First. It was based on not Kevin May's wisdom, but working with great leaders who a lot of folks I studied particularly had self-awareness practices. And I really started to pull out
Mhm.
what it was they're doing differently. Because when individuals, my experience, have a practice where they're developing that kind of self awareness, they lead differently. Their life has a different quality. Their organizations are more successful. Their organizations are filled with people who aren't turning over. The attrition rates go down, and people actually start to take ownership and
Mhm.
accountability in a way that when you show up differently, and this is, I'm sure you see this, when you show up differently with your wife, she shows up differently with you. When
Yeah.
you're less defensive, she is more open. Crazy
Yeah.
how that works. But when we go in being the expert, people resist, people react, people shut down. It doesn't help
Yeah.
us get the result. And this is the key, I think, that I loved unpacking this as I wrote, right? That you talked about the results you want. You don't have time in your life. For me, it comes down to results. What's the life we want?
Mhm.
Who's the leader we want to be in our relationship with our spouse or running a billion-dollar company? Who's the person I need to be? Who's the person I want to be? What's the best version of myself look like? To have that clarity of vision. With that clarity of vision, for me, it's like a target. Once you actually write it down to say, this is who I'm becoming. Because if you don't write it down, I can guarantee you who you're becoming, an extension of who you were. It's a
Yeah.
slow, iterative process. And a lot of
Yep.
people just more deeply ingrain the same patterns. And then they become a victim to the world and think the world is the issue. Now, the world isn't the
Yep.
issue. You're the issue. Change your cognitive framework in alignment with the person that you want to become, your vision. Then move intentionally based on awareness, based on presence, right? So there's the whole the 4 steps. It's like first you start with presence, become, increase your ability to be in this moment. Then develop awareness, self-awareness of your thinking, your feeling, your behaving. then you can move with intention, non-reactivity, not caught in a pattern, but true. That's where free will happens, with that kind of ability to choose. And then the final question is, well, what choice? In alignment with the
Hmm.
vision of the person that you want to be. So when you think about the man you're becoming in your relationship with your wife, not the guy you are, not the one who got you here, brilliant, but time's going to go by. Who are you going to
Yeah.
be in 10 years? You can start becoming that person now intentionally, where we spend most of our life becoming who we are by reacting to the world around us. Now we can change that power equation. That's leadership, man. That's the thing that gets me
Hmm.
fired up. And helping people do that, it's brilliant.
Yeah. And there's another aspect too that I'm sure we'll go down this hole some more, but is empathy and the lack of pride of ownership of something, right? And so those are the two things that I really key on when I'm leading an organization. I want to tell you a story. Just recently, I was at work and I got an email that I'd received a monetary bonus for helping the company win a large multi-million-dollar program, which I am appreciative that they gave. I forgot all about it. I didn't even know it was coming. And so I was talking to someone who's close to me about this, and they said, well, I don't know why they asked it this way, but they said, what did you do exactly? And I said, I led. That was what I did. I led. And the way that I led turned, and I'm not bragging my own horn here. The way that I led was I was empathetic and I didn't have a pride to ownership. So I did two things. I put my head down on the ground where I belong to try to see other things or see things from other people's point of view. And then two, to make sure that I led people with the complete intent that they replace me, right? So I don't have this pride of ownership that I built the project and I'm running these programs that are multi-million dollars with 100 people and all this hardware and software to build for a Department of Defense agency so that I could walk away and go, look what I did. I got more pride out of saying, look who leads. The people who are leading that program now are the people that I led. And I'm perfectly happy not leading those big projects anymore for now anyway. And so I think for me, one of the other things is that I'm able to detach myself from this pride of ownership of all the things. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look what I've done. I'm proud. I know what I did. I know what I've done to get there. And I don't need other people to necessarily hear that. What I do like to do is to tell people that you need to be empathetic. You need to realize that you have the power to care about other people enough to help them grow. And if they choose to not do that, then that would be something different. But at least as a good leader, and I think you and I would agree on this, it's a struggle to turn yourself outward and to push people in front of you because that's just not the natural thing, I think, for people. Would you agree? I mean,
Yeah,
what are your
well, I
thoughts?
like what you're saying. Every organization, I see so many organizations miss this point. They will identify who they are with the commodity they produce. So I've worked in
Mm,
financial institutions who will say, we're a financial institution, or manufacturers, we're a manufacturing facility. No, you're a human institution. Everything you do is for people, by people, to a human end. The commodity you happen to produce is security technology. Great. But don't confuse the two, because when you start making decisions that you believe are good for your commodity but undermine the humans, you're going to lose. That's
yeah,
just that simple. It's all a human endeavor. So I like when you talk about empathy. For me, it's the demonstration of empathy too. Not only having empathy, but being able
right.
to demonstrate that through active listening. For me, it goes
Yeah,
back to presence. Knowing how to be present with people and not be the fixer. And this is, I think, the detriment of so many good leaders. What got them here is they're good at getting stuff done. And so somebody comes in with a problem or a headache or they're frustrated and right away they go into fix it mode and
hmm,
they don't listen. And the other person still doesn't feel disconnected. And it ties back into alignment as well, right? Imagine somebody comes in, you're a leader, somebody comes into your office and they're frustrated. What do? Do you align with them, or do you step into your role as the fixer and solve the problem and send them off with your solution, not their solution? It's never going to be
yeah,
as effective. But I like what you're
totally
saying,
agree.
demonstrating empathy. Hey, tell me about, oh, you seem frustrated, and listen and reflect and match and mirror and be there with them in the present moment, regardless of how you feel, regardless of how clear the solution seems to you. Just be with that person
Yeah.
and watch. Your
Yeah.
job as a leader is to change that, because we have three brains, right? And this, I love this. I wrote about this in a book. We have three brains: a caveman, a genius, and a robot. And your job is not to have all the answers as a leader, but it's to do two things. One, help them interrupt the robot, help them overcome the caveman, and access the genius. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing when you talk about that empathy, is helping them, especially if they're irritated, frustrated, or stuck, just to show up with presence to help them have a venue where they can overcome. That's one of the things they found through kind of neuro research, is that when individuals are in that caveman brain, when their limbic system is taken over, one of the most impactful, effective things you can do as a leader to get them to de-escalate them, right? That's the first thing you must do. Because if they're
Right.
frustrated, their caveman brain's in charge. They can't think logically. Logic's not available to them. And if
Right.
you're not paying attention, it's contagious. They're irritated. We become irritated. Suddenly we're short with them because they don't get it, because they're a knucklehead and we think they're the problem. No, we're the problem. Our job is to de-escalate and then evoke the genius brain out of them. And there's a certain skill set I write about to help individuals be able to do that's seen to
Mm-hmm.
work, right? And that's the cool thing. And I love it when you talk about empathy, man. That is just, it's the ground. It's the thing you lose in your relationship with your wife when you're being right, and the thing I do too, right? We all do with our
Yeah.
spouses. We fall back to those ingrained neural pathways that we got so legitimately when I was growing up, being the responsible, hardworking, smart one. And that got my attention needs met. And now 50 years later, I'm still playing that out. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't get me what I want. It was good when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not
True.
saying throw the baby out with the bathwater either, right? I mean, it's about
Right.
choice. And without awareness, there's no choice. Without awareness, we keep doing the same thing. With awareness, we
Yeah.
start to recognize, oh, this is my tendency. And right now, that tendency is not going to help move towards that vision of who I want to be,
Yeah.
of the impact I want to have.
And I bet you, as we're talking, I'm thinking about your blueprint. And one of my thought processes in that question was, which one of those do leaders typically struggle with the most? Um, I bet it's one of these,
Yeah.
whether it's empathy or a presence or whatever.
Yeah, the hard thing is it's the detriment of expertise, right? And I've seen so many good experts they get promoted because they're an expert, because they're so good at what they do, and that
Oh, yeah.
becomes their Achilles heel. So it's like attachment. A lot of it comes back to, we're attached to what we know, and because of that, there's no openness. Because of that, so it's all, in my mind, it's like all one thing, these four elements of this one thing. And
Hmm.
what is the thing? Well, having clarity. First of all, waking up to know you can be better. Waking up to know that your way isn't the way. It's just
Right.
simply your way. And I think one key indicator that leaders can start to pay attention to, if their organization is not producing across the board the way they want, I can tell them where to start to solve that problem. And it's not out
Hmm.
there in the organization. 100% of the time, if there's an issue with the team, with the organization, anywhere, it always goes back in. Before you can lead others, you have to lead yourself. And it goes
Yeah.
back to this equation too, that, well, it starts with this old saying. I love it, from thousands of years ago: with your thoughts, you make the world. And so it's
Hmm.
so important to start paying attention to your thinking, because your beliefs drive your behaviors, and your behaviors get results. So if you want to change the results, you can look outwardly and try to focus on everybody else, but that's not what created it all. It's
Yeah.
your behaviors that drove the results, and your beliefs drive the behaviors. It's back to the alloy. If you change the way you show up, the system will change. This is
Hmm.
without exception and without fail. And it's not, it's empathy, but also the empathy to hold people accountable. I've seen folks who will couch empathy as kind or being nice.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy's not being nice. Sometimes empathy
Right.
means, there's empathy, but then there's also accountability.
Right.
I've watched people let their organizations fail because they were so good at being nice and they didn't hold people accountable. And so they didn't give
Yeah.
people feedback that says you're not producing at the level that we need. And so it's interesting, after I worked with one organization recently that after years, they finally got rid of the individual who was underperforming, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody sighed and said, "Oh my goodness, what took you so long?" And then
Yeah.
everybody, guess what? Stepped up,
Yeah.
because that one individual was modeling. We don't care. We don't say what we're going to, we don't do what we're going to say. We don't say what we're going to do. We don't align our actions with our words. We don't have integrity. It doesn't matter if we produce or not. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to be a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. When I started with that project that I was telling you about earlier, the first thing I told them on the kickoff meeting was that I won't always do everything correct. I'm going to make mistakes. That's what leaders do. I realize that's going to happen. There are probably things that are going to happen on this project I've not dealt with before. So I may lean on some of you to help me with these things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing that I will do is I will be predictable. If you do something good, you're going to know that I'm going to do something for you on that. And if you do something bad, you're going to know I'm going to do something about that. So there will never be a question of what Eric will do, because they already know if it's a good thing, it's going to be a good thing. If it's a bad thing, it's a bad thing. And I think that really paid a lot of dividends, because when the staff heard that, there were individuals who just automatically turned on the go switch, and they said, well, I want awards. And I've had leaders that did not provide awards. We did all kinds of sacrifices. We made all these innovative decisions and made things happen for the company and generated revenue that they didn't make the last year. And we made numbers better and our margins are higher and all these great metrics, right? And then they didn't get much from it, if anything. And then
Can I pause you
now
really
they've
quick
gotten
and
out.
ask? Let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on in the leader who does not acknowledge the success of their staff?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I found in my case, there's 2, maybe 3 big indicators. Number one, they just don't care. They are the, I don't know a better way to say it, but they're the drill sergeants of the organization. I want you to, someone's telling me to make the numbers. You make the numbers. And then when someone says something like, why don't we get anything? Well, because that's our job. That's what you get paid to do.
I love that. So, and this is when we talk about upgrading your leadership, this is exactly it. To recognize that might be your worldview. That is an antiquated way to lead. It does not bring out the best in people.
Right.
And so I even think for a leader, and I love it because I've worked with leaders, and you have too, that have that logic that says, this is your job. Do it. My job is not to babysit, not to handhold, not to go around thanking everybody. No, guess what? Your job is to create engagement in your organization. And it goes back to, I'd say that same neural wire all the way back. The kid who no matter what, I love it. I worked with a guy, his dad was the coach of the football team. And he played football. His dad was always extra hard on him and always had an extra high expectation and never gave him praise. Now he shows up in a way with the elevated expectation, never gives anybody praise because that's the way it is. It's your job. Yeah. You can't figure out why there's a high attrition.
Yep.
Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it just
no, and that's perfectly fine. I think that it's a great idea that, again, that to use a word that we've talked about before, the blueprint for leadership often comes from the experiences that we've had, and whether those are positive or negative, or it differentiates between individuals. And all the experiences we have make us the flavor we are in leadership, and that a way to think different is very hard unless you have either people like yourself that are helping coach us in the right direction, or you've got leaders who happen to have been lucky enough to learn how to lead this way, and that they have broken that generational cycle of bad leadership. My dad was a hard man. He worked on the railroad. He was tough on me. He wasn't emotional. He didn't freely give you things. And if he gave you something, he kind of had a guilt trip with it. And I've told my wife before, many years ago that when we had kids, before we did, I was like, I am not going to be my father to them. I'm going to be the opposite of that. I'm going to have all the good qualities that he provided. I'm going to take those. I'm going to pick and choose what I want to build, what I want to be. As to go back to what you said, is where do I want to be? What kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be to others who look at me either in a colloquial light where they just see me every day and they're, there's, hey, Eric, how's it going? Or the relationship, I'm connected to you, kind of like my children, my friends, my cousin, my wife, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, and all of those that go with that. And I think now what I see, at least for me, I'm able to pick and choose, and I have broken that generational cycle. I'm proud that I am the best version of both my mother and my father. And I think that's really powerful for me. But, as we go into our careers and we move in, we find that so many people just don't have that accomplished. And that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to make people better leaders. And I hope they're here. I really do hope that they're listening to this because there's some real gems here. But as we're moving in to the leadership role, and there are some leaders who are natural ones. They're ones who are built for it, and they have all the right packaging for it. But there are so many people that struggle, and so many of the things we've talked about are the points where they struggle, right? And so thinking about problems in a way, what's some of for you, like what are some of the major leadership problems that you see most in businesses? And you probably have a plethora of them, but if you had to pick one, what would you think?
Well, it comes back to, I think, some of the language we've already talked about. The problem. So there's the effect of, or the symptom is what? The symptom is quality errors, on-time delivery that doesn't happen, profitability. It's the end result. There it is. You see it. You're not producing the way you want. There's attrition. There's turnover. There's waste. Okay, but the real problem is, it goes back to the lack of awareness to understand, right? I love what you talked about. If you hadn't had that awareness, it's so easy for you to have adopted that same hard perspective that your father had. You got it naturally. And maybe, do you have siblings? Maybe some of your siblings did and are a little different than you are, didn't make that kind of committed conviction and didn't do the work. Leadership is about evolution, right? And so when I see it, it looks like people who are out of alignment with each other. They're instead of moving the same direction, being on the same team, they're antagonistic. And you see organizations that fall into silos, and it's the us's and the thems, and it's people blaming each other and making excuses and being defensive. That's some of the issue. And when you unpack, it really comes back to people not feeling seen, heard, and validated. People not feeling like they're part of something, like their idea doesn't matter. And that goes back to leaders who are leading the way, like your hard-edged dad, right? They show up that way. This is the way to do it. It's like the drill sergeant leader. Brilliant. Show up as a drill sergeant, but know that that's one tool in your tool chest. And sometimes, even for you, Eric, you have to be the drill sergeant sometimes. That's what's going to get you the result. And I mean, I'm the guy who needs a swift kick in the pants once in a while. But I'll tell you what, if that's your only tool in your tool chest and you're walking in to fix plate glass windows and you have a hammer, it's not going to work.
But you'll stare at it and be like, what do I do with this thing?
I've seen organizations who say, the employee's the problem. I'm like, this is the 6th time you've told me the employee's the problem. The employee who was a top performer, who was doing everything they could, and you're saying they're the problem. No, they're reacting to you in your leadership style. That's the biggest problem. When you really peel back the layers, you can see all kinds of indications of the problem. But when you really peel it back, it comes back at some level to that empathy you talked about and how a leader really shows up. And that requires a lot of internal work. It requires work. You didn't just become the guy who was able to be the best version of your mother and your father. That took work. You made a choice. You would do the things, right? The 4 steps. You had the presence to even be aware, like, oh, look what I'm look what I experienced. You could have shut it down and just moved through the world with a chip on your shoulder. No,
Right.
you had awareness, and then you made a decision to be intentional towards what? Towards a vision of who you were becoming, towards becoming this thing. So it's presence, awareness, intention, and vision. I call it the PAVE model, PAIV. You learn how to kind of pave your way forward differently than just being on autopilot. And that's the robot brain, right? We all have. If you're not paying attention, you'll just absorb these qualities and you'll just play off the same patterns again and again and again, and then justify it. And then the hard thing is, in your justifying, you become a victim to the world. And you don't have to. That's the cool thing. That's what I see with the life you're talking about. You're not a victim. No, you made a decision, and you have your parents to thank for it, because all of that you learned helped you become the person that you are.
Yeah. There's a question that some people have asked me: how will I know what right looks like or what wrong looks like? And that's the, I'm going to keep that open-ended, whatever the response was, it was. But for me, I think that's a really big thing that I pulled away, was like, because I was able to determine what I did not want, that was what wrong looked like to me. And that's how I defined it. I want to move on to a new block. Recently, I did a podcast on turning chaos to clarity, right? With a young lady named Sophia Kluwer out of Germany. And she focuses on crises management. So she's got all kinds of reasons to care about clarity from chaos, how to get things into a position where an organization or people can react quickly to some type of crisis, regardless of whether that's human capital or financial or supply chain or whatever the things could be in there. What are your thoughts on, and your perspectives on, getting people to regain clarity and focus as they get pulled in so many directions in a workplace or in a role, or even the idea that I'm expected to do all of these things? Because I want to, before I give you the answer or the floor for the answer, I remember the first thought I had in my head when I became that project manager for that multi-million-dollar project was, how in the world am I going to do this? I don't know all of these things. And I felt like I had 100 million questions with no one to tell me the answers. And I wasn't even sure that the answers I was going to get were the ones that I wanted. I didn't know what good answers looked like. I just knew that I didn't know anything about this particular. I knew about the customer because I'd worked with them for years, but I didn't know like the process. I'm not a systems engineer by trade. I'm a geographer by trade. And so now I'm leading hardware integration, software integration, development, you name it, operation sustainment, configuration management, risk management, all the vulnerabilities, cybersecurity, and I don't know that stuff. And so I was like getting pulled in all of these directions. And to me, that became super chaotic. So to you would be, how would you, what's some tips on how we can get ground regained in the clarity chaos fight as we journey in our professional?
That's such a brilliant question, because there is a actual specific formula that when you follow that formula, it will take you from this place of utter chaos into a place of crystal clarity that will allow you to make decisions in an effective way, right? And it goes back to being able to upgrade your leadership to be able to do that. There's a skill set that you can develop absolutely around that. So I love the question. I love you had the conversation about it. And I think it's the topic of our next podcast.
Yeah, that'd be great. Because there's a lot to go there.
Oh, absolutely. I think we can unpack that. And I would like to put that on hold and suggest that let's reconnect. And we can go, there's some depth that we can get into around that'll help your listeners be able to have a methodical process they know they can follow that'll help them go from that place of unknowing, that chaos, that anxiety that comes with that, to a place of confident certainty. That's powerful. And for me, that's leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. It's to be able to recognize that it's chaotic is fairly easy. You can sense that when you first walk in. Sometimes it's hard to get past that smoke that people put out in front of you, the mirror. Everything's perfect in our organization. everyone loves what they do. Everyone's taken care of, and we have the greatest managers in the world. They didn't say the word leader, right? They said we have the greatest manager in the world. And so they label them right there. And then you get into the point where you start getting down in the weeds and you start putting stuff away and moving things out of the way and kind of brushing back the cobwebs. You start seeing some skeletons that they didn't tell you about. And that is where you kind of start seeing those seeds from you start seeing the chaos in the organization that you just, it's what the kings and the queens did right back in the old days. They all come out on the balcony, they wave their hands, they smile, and they go back in there and they just go at it. They were not in a team at all to lead anything that they were doing. So leadership is often like that. People tend to put on this, look at what I can do, and then they turn around and they're someone completely different.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And there is steps to integrate, to become, it's about wisdom. It's a path of wisdom. And for me, it's the most profound path there is. And it's really at a core level, it's the most spiritual path there is, because it's being the best version of yourself to leave a positive impact, an intentional impact on the world. And again, that's why I put my whole heart into writing Lead Yourself First. And that's why I'm excited. We need to get back together. We need to wind down now, because I realize I have clients. Oh my goodness, I need to get back and see.
Yeah, I was just checking the time. Yeah,
it went quickly.
So we definitely this
is such a great conversation. I appreciate it.
It is. Well, I'll tell you, we will wind it up. We've got to get more of these podcasts on the book, because I probably had 5 or 6 questions. We got through 2, I think. But regardless, the information that we both have been able to exchange, and a lot of the things that you've got put out here are not novel. I mean, they're out there. It's just that you got to have someone help you see the world in the way that that makes sense. And I think bringing it back down to earth and making things simple is the way to do it. And but regardless, I hope everybody knows that book is going to be coming out shortly. Leading Yourself First.
And I'll encourage, go to upgradeyourleadership.com. That's simple. Upgradeyourleadership.com. And if it's not out when you get there, there's a place you can get on the list to know when it's coming out. And it's based on work with good leaders who have made phenomenal changes in their life and in their leadership and in their businesses. So it's a pathway that now I live and die by, simply by having spent the last 2 decades doing this work. So go to upgradeyourleadership.com, and look forward to helping you upgrade your leadership and become better.
I hope everybody's writing that down. That, along with maysleadership.com, making sure that you're able to get it and read more about you. But in the meantime, we will go ahead and hope that everyone subscribes to this and gets on board with this podcast, because there are more of this. There's more of this coming. So they need to stay tuned for all the things that they were hoping to listen to. This is a journey for everyone. Until then, Dr. Mays, I'm going to close this down. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure, and it was really good to see you again. We'll get connected so that we can do this again. And until next time.
Thank you. Be well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. If you found it valuable, then make sure that you subscribe and activate those notifications so that you don't miss any episodes in the future. Also, please share the video and the channel here on your favorite podcast platform and anywhere else you can think of. Our goal is to help as many people as we can become great leaders. Thank you so much again for watching.